Right, I'm going to continue to look at Joseph, the story of Joseph again tonight. I'm going to cover Genesis chapter 43. If you're not there in your Bibles, you can be turning over there. And while you're doing that, we'll kind of introduce the idea, or I guess one of the ideas that I think is kind of evident in chapter 43 here tonight, and then talk a little bit about the text itself. The first question, though, on our handout is this: do you find it easier to blame somebody else for your problems, or to take responsibility for them?
If you're good, blame somebody else.
Well, why do you think that is?
Nobody wants to take blame on themselves. They want to push it off to someone else. Makes them feel better.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes you feel better if somebody else is the source of your problem. You know, if somebody comes up and says, "Well, you have this problem because of you," and that kind of, it doesn't rubs us the wrong way, does it? And it's just a lot easier. It's a lot harder, I think, to own up to us being the cause of our problems than it's just a lot easier to blame somebody else for them. And what's interesting to me, and we've studied obviously this story, and a lot of us, from the time that we were small. But one of the things that has stood out to me as I've been going through this is the attitude of Jacob throughout all this turmoil and all these problems that are occurring in his life. And you contrast that with Joseph. There's just a completely different mindset. I mean, as you study Jacob, who does Jacob blame for all the things that are happening to him? Well, we'll learn the answer tonight if we don't know. Let me ask you this: who does Joseph blame? He had a lot of problems happening in his life. Who did he blame for it?
I don't know the word blame of it uses. He credits it to God.
Yeah, he doesn't really pass the blame to anybody, did he? Doesn't really have this attitude, well, you caused this problem in my life. But Jacob's a little bit different when you kind of look at him and examine. And, Jacob, it's almost like at times, he plays the victim. The woe me, or, everybody is against me, or the world is against me. And you think about a lot of the things that happened in the life of Jacob. What caused a lot of the problems that he encountered?
Jacob did.
He did, didn't he? I mean, you think about the story of Joseph, and it was really how Jacob treated Joseph that led to the things that happened within his life. Now, I'm not trying to justify what his brothers did to him, but would the story have been a little bit different if Jacob hadn't shown such favoritism toward Joseph? I think it'd be a lot different, don't you? But he did cause a lot of those problems in his life were self-inflicted, and I don't know if he was blind to that or not. Well, maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later if we got time. All right, let's go to chapter 43 here. And question number 2 here: describe the conditions in the land.
The famine.
Yeah, just a regular famine.
Severe.
Yeah, the Bible actually describes it at this point as being severe. And what's interesting is if you go a couple chapters over in Genesis chapter 45, you'll find that Joseph tells his brothers, we're just 2 years into this. We got 5 more years of this to come before you can plow and before you can be able to harvest anything. And so think about it at the point of 2 years, it's severe. But I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, if you had to go an entire year without being able to raise any crops, and then you get into the second year and you run into the same problem, I mean, that would be a pretty big dilemma, wouldn't it? And one of the things that we learned about specifically was it was the grain. It was the grain that was one of the main problems that existed here within the known land at this time. But it was very severe, just a couple years into it.
Was it in Egypt too?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it was it?
yeah, it was all across.
So you
Well,
wonder how people survived.
yeah, and again, there's probably a lot of them who didn't. I mean, you think about if at this point, Jacob's situation was a little bit unique, like we talked about a little bit last week, though, because the fact that he had, I mean, just his assets were so big. I mean, to take care of that many animals and, that many people would have, I mean, at the point that where there's no grain, that would have been a very difficult thing to do. But yeah, I imagine there were at least some people who died in this famine. And in fact, they talk about it pretty openly, death, don't they? That this is a real possibility with what's occurring here. What about that was the condition of the land. What about the state of Jacob's family at this point? How would you describe the state of his family?
That they've run out of grain and stuff.
Yeah, they've eaten up all the supplies, right? And so you can imagine, kind of remember last week whenever we ended, there was a lot of fear that was in the hearts of Jacob and his sons because of what had happened in Egypt. And so you can imagine, they got back, they brought this grain, and imagine week by week, you're just eyeballing it, and it's dwindling. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And you're hoping and you're praying that the famine's going to come to an end. You're hoping, you're praying for rain, for crops, and thinking, well, maybe we won't have to go back down into Egypt after all. But it comes to the point where they run out of grain, and they didn't have any more to eat. And so the subject of going back to Egypt had to be brought up again. Is that a subject they wanted to talk about? Is that a problem they wanted to face head on? I'd say this a lot, but sometimes I don't do a very good job of this. I think it's important when we go through these stories to try to find some, relevant application for us today. But generally speaking, I think as people, one of the ways that we try to avoid problems is we just don't talk about it or think about it. Is that a good way to deal with problems? Usually doesn't work very good, does it? But I kind of get that impression here with Jacob's family. We just don't talk about it, and we don't think about it till the time comes, and then you gotta do something. But they were trying to put off facing that problem, hoping they wouldn't have to. But they ended up, of course, having to do that. So question number 3 here. Whenever Jacob suggests for his sons to make a return trip to Egypt, who steps forward? Judah. And what's significant about Judah?
He was the one that sold Joseph to the Egyptians.
Yeah, he was the guy who suggested that they sell it, right? Of course, Judah ends up being a pretty good tribe, doesn't it? When you think about some of the people who descended from it, famous people, anybody? Tribe of Judah? David? Jesus? Yeah, pretty royal lineage there, isn't it? But he was the one who stepped up and stepped forward, we could say. And he basically took charge. And, Jacob, again, I kind of have to ask myself this question. Do you think Jacob was like totally unaware of his favoritism toward Joseph and Benjamin? You think he was blind to that? Or you think he just didn't care? Because that's really the only 2 options you got, isn't it? I kind of get the impression it's like he doesn't really care. He's like, Rachel was my favorite wife. These are my sons from Rachel. I love them more than I love any of my other sons. And it doesn't seem like he's ashamed or that he shrinks from that idea at all. And so if you're trying to deal with Jacob here, in a logical way, and obviously his favoritism is slanted toward the sons of Rachel, how difficult would that be? be kind of hard to deal with him in a reasonable way, wouldn't it? And you kind of see that here, I think, with Judah. All the things in the nature of Jacob would have brought some pretty hard feelings to the surface, and again, would have been a rough guy, I think, to try to negotiate with. But you see that with Judah, don't you? So he says, you guys go down to Egypt, you get us some more grain, we've run out. Judah steps to the front, and what condition here, question number 4, does Judah place upon their return to Egypt? Yeah. He really starts off, he doesn't just come out and first thing say, we're not going unless. He kind of reminds him gently. He says, remember what the Egyptian ruler told us. He said, unless we bring our younger brother back with us, we wouldn't be able to trade. And think about, again, sometimes I read these stories and I know the outcome of them, so I don't think about the harshness of the reality of the situation in the moment that they're in. But how had Joseph treated them whenever they went there the first time? Roughly, right? And in fact, if you go back and you reread what we read last week or talked about last week in chapter 42, Joseph basically accuses them of being spies, right? And so the first time he says, you guys are spies. And they say, no, we're not spies. And Joseph said, yeah, I think you are spies. I think you've come down here to spy out in the land of Egypt and, find our weaknesses and our defenses so that you guys can attack us. And so they say, no, we're not. This is our story. We're 12 brothers. Our father is back home. Our younger brother has stayed back home. One of us is not. And Jacob says, Joseph said, that sounds like a pretty good cover story for spies to me. And he said, remember what did he do to them?
Put them in jail.
Put them in jail, did he? For how long? 3 days. And then he let them out and he said, here's what's going to happen. He said, I'm going to keep one of you and you guys can take the grain back to your family. But when you come back again for more food, you bring your younger brother back and I'll know you're not spies and you're telling me the truth. And so it's not like, it was some joke that this guy was going to mistake them for spies, or that they weren't going to be able to trade, or that even worse, if you read there in chapter 34, Joseph said that you don't die. He actually said, you guys come back without your brother and you're going to prove to me you're spies, you're dead. And so there was an urgency to Judah's request here, and he says, hey, remember what this ruler in Egypt told us. And so we're not even going to be able to talk with him if we don't have Benjamin. We're sure not going to be able to get any food. And not only that, he's going to count us as spies because he thought we were lying the first time. And we're going to end up dead, or we're going to end up being put into prison. So here's a question that I have. Was Jacob willing to take that chance? Was he willing to put all their lives on the line and send them back to Egypt and say, go get us some food while I hold Benjamin here? Kind of sounds like it, doesn't it?
Sounds like he was willing to take that chance.
It does, doesn't it? If you were one of his children, how would that make you feel? It's again, you have this idea of Jacob, and the way that he's treating his own sons and his own family is just not a correct way to do things. But
do you think they felt kind of curious why he wanted Benjamin to come back? Do you think that'd be kind of an odd demand that for them to just bring Benjamin back?
I don't think necessarily it would. The whole point of it was he thought they were lying. And so the way that they could prove that they were honest people and they really weren't spies is if they brought this brother back. Well, obviously, if you're making up a cover story, you're not going to have a brother to bring back. And so I think again, I don't know that they thought it was unusual They probably didn't like it, but Jacob certainly didn't like it. We know that, don't we? But I don't know. I mean, I think he would have let them leave without Benjamin, don't you?
I agree.
I don't think there's much resistance on his part here. But Judah's persistent. Judah just flat out, he reminds him about it, and then he says, listen, we're not going down there unless Benjamin goes with us. And part of what he does here is he emphasizes to them that, this is a life and death situation here in more than one way. In more than one way. They had to get grain. They had to get food. And the only way they were going to get any food was if Benjamin went back with them. And so Judah just basically refuses. He said, there's no way we're going to go down there unless you send Benjamin with us. So question number 5 here, what was Jacob's response to the demand for him to send Benjamin?
Right, tell him that you got a brother.
Yeah. Once again, Jacob's out here, playing the victim almost. And you think about him, he even asked this question. He says, why have you done this to me? Well, what'd they do to him?
Pretty good at sounding grateful, Jacob.
Well, yeah, but purposely, and that's part of their reaction there. Question number 6, whenever their father, basically tries to pass the blame onto them and say, well, it's your fault. You put me in this situation. It's your fault. And how do they react to him blaming them for Benjamin having to go to Egypt?
We just answered the questions we didn't know they were going to ask.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this guy, they didn't know it was Joseph, first of all, but he was interrogating them, wasn't he? And that was his job. And so that's what they said. We just told the truth. We were just honest with it. They asked us about our father. Should we have told them we didn't have a father either? If he was still alive? There was no way that they could have known that Joseph was going to say, you've got to bring Benjamin down the second time or you're not going to get any grain. And so it wasn't like, they had purposely planned all this out and put this great burden on Jacob. But again, you kind of have him, playing this victim. Why do you guys do this to me? Why you treat me so badly? So question number 7 here, what guarantee does Judah give to his father?
He offered himself as a surety.
Yeah, and what does that mean? Sure.
In place of Benjamin.
Yeah, it's basically a guarantee, isn't it? And what Judah was saying is you can be sure that Benjamin's coming back. And if Benjamin doesn't come back, I don't come back. Okay, my life for his life. And that had, a couple of things that are pretty important here, but he's trying to put the mind of Jacob at ease, I guess, as best that he can, but he got to figure out a way to guarantee that he's going to let Benjamin go with him. And so he does the only thing that he can. He says, listen, I give you my promise, I give you my word, I'll give you my guarantee that I'm going to get him back here. And, that probably had to help Jacob a little bit. I don't know that it completely pacified him, but so Judah also, again, if you read there, he makes it clear this is a matter of life and death. If you look in verse 8, it says, Judah said to Israel his father, send the lad with me and we will rise and go that we may live and not die. Notice this, both we and you and also our little ones. So Judah kind of lays it out like this. He says, listen, if you don't let Benjamin go, we're all dead. Okay, this is a life and death situation. I'm going to die. You're going to die. All my brothers are going to die. All our children are going to die. Our entire heritage. And so I guess the question would kind of become this: was Jacob willing to let everyone and everything die before he would send Benjamin to Egypt. I mean, does that sound like a reasonable thing to do?
Through all of this, he never asked about Simeon either, had he?
There's no indication, is there? You know, and there's really not much indication that he's worried about him too much. Yeah. But if think about it, you know, if that's how intent and set that he was willing to let everyone and everything that he had die, I mean, they were dead anyway if Benjamin didn't go, right? So Judah kind of, again, he tries to be as logical and reasonable and tries to subside his fears as much as he can by guaranteeing that he's going to bring Benjamin back. So Jacob finally, I guess, decides he's got to go. There's no way around it. And what does he do? Question 8 here. What does he do whenever he sends his sons back to Egypt?
Sends some best fruits and double money for the grain.
Yeah. And this is kind of interesting here because, again, you may have noticed a lot of the time that I've talked about the famine of grain. There was evidently still some food that was available. But I think the main thing that was lacking was the grain. And food at this time would have been very valuable commodity, right? If you think about it, this time, what's the greatest gift that somebody could give you? I mean, the answer would be food. And so there were what were some of the things he said? I don't remember exactly.
Honey, spices, myrrh, nuts, and almonds.
Yeah. So the gifts that were given to Joseph was that of food. Again, not grain, because they didn't have any, right? And also they took enough money, first of all, to pay for the first food that they brought back. Because remember, when they got back, all their money was in their sacks. And they also took more money in case, well, to purchase more food. And, you know, think about these brothers here as their journey. Kind of mentioned, this is an overnight trip, right? This is 250, 300-mile journey that they're making. Had a lot of money the first time they went, now they got double. That would be kind of an uneasy situation too. Pretty dangerous path that they had to take down there. But he does some things that he in his mind, in Jacob's mind, he thinks that it might help contribute to a positive outcome. So here's kind of a question to think about. What do you think Jacob's faith is like at this point? His faith in God.
Jacob or
Jacob. Yeah, Jacob.
I'd say it's probably at a low.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it, doesn't it? I mean, he does mention in verse 14, you know, may God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may release your other brother and Benjamin. But he also, what does he say after that? Do you have a lot of confidence that things were going to turn out okay? He basically just says, if I lose my children, I lose my children. You know? But it's not a lot of confidence in, first of all, if there was, he would have sent Benjamin right off and not even worried about it, right? But just not a lot of confidence, I think, that Jacob has here. And, you know, we have to also understand he doesn't know God's plan like we do and can see the end of it. So it's a little bit easier for us to look back on it probably and be critical. All right, so the brothers go down into Egypt, and whenever they get there, where are they taken as soon as they arrive?
Joseph's house.
Yeah, to Joseph's house. And, you know, it talks about here, of course, you have to understand, they couldn't just walk up and see Joseph. I mean, you had to go through several people before you'd ever get an appointment with Joseph. And so the steward of Joseph's house, one of Joseph's servants, tells Joseph, you know, these men have come back. Joseph sees them, sees that Benjamin's with them, and he tells them, he says, go take them to my house. Now, he told his servant, you know, kill an animal, we're gonna have lunch. But his brothers didn't know it at this point, you know, why they were being taken to Joseph's house. And think about, I mentioned 250-mile journey, you know, maybe 3 months worth of traveling. They had a lot of time to think about this, didn't they? They had a lot of time to think about how they were going to approach this, to run all the scenarios through their minds. And really, I think there's three major problems or three major things that they were trying to accomplish. The first thing, of course, would be to rectify the money situation. You know, get it all figured out and explain to Joseph why they had their money. Now, how would you do that? That you just tell the truth, right? That was their plan. The second thing is they had to get Simeon out of prison. Had to get him released and be able to take him back. And then the third thing was they had to keep Benjamin safe. And so I think those were the three, you know, main things that were on their minds as they were going, three major problems, I think, that they thought they would encounter as they went back here to Egypt. But Joseph immediately doesn't even talk to him, just immediately has them escorted to his house. So, question number 10 here, what does Joseph's brothers believe was going to happen? Yeah, and they basically thought they were in deep trouble, didn't they? Because they said, here's what's going to happen. He brought us to his house so he can lay this case before us. And in the end, what's going to happen is he's going to take all of our donkeys. He wants all of our donkeys, and he wants to make us his slaves. And so he's going to try to accomplish that by, you know, blaming us or accusing us of stealing this money and taking it back with us. What steps, question 11 here, what steps do the brothers take to try to avoid those fears coming true?
They just opened up and told the whole story.
Yeah, and it wasn't to Joseph, right? Because they hadn't even seen Joseph yet. But they were brought, whenever they were brought to Joseph's house, of course, the chief servant, you might say the manager of his household, Joseph knew a lot about that, right? But his chief steward, his manager of the household, met him. And as soon as he comes out to meet him, I mean, if you're in a situation like that, what do? I'd look for a mediator, wouldn't you? They say, listen, he might listen to his house manager. You know, maybe we can tell him this story and he can talk to Joseph and he can get this thing sorted out before we get sold and our donkeys confiscated here. So they basically tell him the story. They say, listen, you know, we paid for this and we were journeying back home. And as we were journeying back home, we opened up our grain sack and somehow our money was in our sacks. And, you know, if they can convince him of their innocence, I mean, does that sound like a believable story? Not really.
Not really.
But give them credit. They didn't try to come up with a lie. You know, they didn't fabricate some story like they did about Joseph, right? They just came out and were honest and told the truth about it. And so they try to kind of form a connection with the manager of the house before they actually get to meet Joseph. Question 12 here, how does Joseph's servant ease their concerns?
Pretty much told them not to worry about it, peace be with you. And
Yeah. He said, what are you talking about? I got your money. He said, your God and the God of your fathers must have blessed you, must have put some money in your sack for you. So he said, don't worry about that. You know, no concerns there. What else does he do?
Brought Simeon out.
Yeah, bring Simeon out of prison. So right away, you got your first problem. No big deal. You know, it's covered. We got your money. You didn't steal anything from us. Need to get Simeon free. Okay, he's free. Right? And so the third thing that you're worried about here is the safety of Benjamin. But it is important to understand, you know, that these guys obviously didn't know the outcome or the situation, and so it had to be comforting to have those first two problems or major problems knocked out. Here's something to think about. Where was Simeon brought out from?
He's in prison. Wasn't he?
Was he?
Well, they're at Joseph's house.
We're at Joseph's house here, aren't we? So Simeon's brought out to him. I don't know. Do you think Joseph kept him in prison the whole time?
Well, I think he probably, they saw him bound, so I assume that, it didn't appear that he had run to the place. Why was he selected anyway? That's what I've been trying to look back. What did he?
That's a good question. We did talk a little bit last week about Jewish rabbis teach that he was the one who actually sold them, threw him in the pit, tore his coat off, threw him in the pit, and actually was the one who exchanged the money with the Midianite traders. Jewish rabbi tradition. But again, I don't think the Bible really gives us a reason why. I think there's some significance, don't you? Had to be some reason. But
I would think so too, but he was one that for his sister, when his sister was, he lined everybody up and got after her.
Yeah.
Cleaned house.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's a pretty angry and violent man, wasn't he?
Appeared to be.
Yeah. So where are we at here? All right, Simeon's brought out with him. What does the brothers, question 13 here, what do the brothers do whenever Joseph arrives at the house? Yeah. They had their gifts, they got them ready while they were waiting on Joseph. They learned they were going to be having dinner with him. Of course, another thing I don't think we mentioned that the servant of Joseph's house did, gave them water. They were allowed to clean up and wash their feet. Also fed their donkeys for them. So that had to, that probably had to ease their minds a little bit. But they were informed they were going to eat lunch with Joseph. And so they wash up. They start getting their gifts ready. When Joseph comes in, they give him their gifts and they bow down before him. Now this time, what's significant about them bowing down is who was missing the first time when they bowed down? Benjamin, right? Now you got all 11. Now you got all the brothers, the fulfillment of the dream that Joseph had. But who did Joseph inquire about? Yeah, kind of makes some small talk first. He asked about their well-being. How you guys doing? How's your father? Is he still alive? Yeah, he's still alive. He's well. Do you think they thought this was weird? Because again, think about how Joseph treated them the first time they came. I mean, they were accused of being spies. They were put in prison for 3 days. They were threatened with death if they returned back without Benjamin, and now he invites them over to lunch. I mean, that had me thinking, what in the world is going on here? A lot of red flags going up. There should be, I think. How does Joseph react to seeing his brothers and learning about his father?
Deeply moved.
Yeah. When he saw his own full brother, it caused Joseph to weep. And he actually, the Bible says he actually had to leave the room to even get control of his emotions, didn't he? Really emotional time for him, being able to see his brother again and learn that his father was still alive. Last question here, 16. What two things did Joseph purposely have done during the dinner feast?
said according to age.
Yeah. So one of the things that the brothers notice is they're all set according to their birth, from oldest to youngest. I'm not a mathematician, but I was reading Henry Morris's commentary on Genesis, and he said the chances, this is just an arbitrary chance, somebody comes in, takes these 12 brothers and sets them down in order, it's 1 in 40 million, he said. And so this is another red flag. What's going on? You know, they know more about us than they're letting on, right? Something. How does this guy know so much about us? And then the second thing, what did he do?
Separated from the Egyptians.
Yeah, but he did something else purposely. Yeah, how much more? Every dish that got served, Benjamin got 5 times more than everybody else. And it is, Steve pointed out there, they were in separate areas. You know, so these brothers were dining off by themselves. And Joseph, of course, the Egyptians, they didn't eat with the Hebrews or the Israelites. That was, you know, something that was considered unclean. So they were kind of off by themselves there eating. And Benjamin's getting served 5 times as much as everybody else is getting served. Well, why do you think Joseph did that? Do you think Benjamin was maybe laughing and poking at him a little bit and saying, hey, look at my plate and look at yours? Because I think that's what Joseph probably did a lot to him too. You know how they treated him when he did that? I think Joseph was testing him, you know, how are they going to react? How are they going to react when he's shown favoritism? And to their credit, Bible says they were happy to be alive and just ate and drank like there was no famine. They were just as happy as they could be. So, all right, anybody got any thoughts?